Oh, we're Vande Wettering Farms. We're a family-owned farm. Me and my brother took it over from my dad and his uncle 20-some years ago, maybe 25. We milk 350 cows. We started about 8 years ago with some of the conservation projects with the water monitor and cover crops and no-till. And 2 years ago we started with the grazing. We started out with probably 50 acres of rotational grazing, and now we're up to about 100. Every day we move them, the allotted amounts for the feed. It's been a great benefit, but as far as labor-wise and cost-wise, it's not easy, but it's easy compared to the way we were doing it. Yeah, Adam just got the map here. He can go through that.
I started working with Bill and Tom about 2 years ago, and the real thing to think about with this area is there's a lot of larger dairies, and they're not really going to be interested in putting their dairy cows out for the most part on pasture. But heifers, if you take a look at it, economically there's some real financial incentives to do that. And if you can set these systems up right, you can easily come out here and you can manage the animals. You can manage them so you have a healthier animal at a lower cost. And you can still maintain access to your property. The big misconception that a lot of people have is because you're going to put up a fence that you can't manage it or harvest it. And I think you can see here the fields, while we do have subdivisions here, has it impacted your ability to harvest or take hay off or anything? No. We've had a real fun experience going on here. You've already grazed that over there this summer.
Yeah,
the cover crops?
Interseeded last year with clover when the corn was about a foot tall. And we, when the corn came off in fall, we pastured it till December 11th, and then...
Say that a little louder. How long were you out there?
Till December 11th, yeah. Okay. There was enough feed out there for them. And then we put them back out there. This spring was a little bit of a challenge because of the weather about 2 weeks ago. And they did mow it down to where it was not bare, but a lot lower than it was. And we actually planted it with the cows in it, and we let them on it for a week after we planted it till the corn was about 2 leaf. So it worked well. Yep. And we're gonna get wet.
Yeah, we're good. I took my rain jacket off, now we get rain.
Your map?
So let me explain a little bit about what we've got going on. We set up this fence through Equip, and it's really a fantastic program. The NRCS, I like to say it, we'll help with the fencing, we'll help with the water lines, we'll help with all the structural practices, and what we get back as a people, as an agency, is grass. This grass is the best filter we have for water quality, for keeping our soil on the land. So if we can get this grass growing, what we've done is we've kept our soil in place. Infiltration is exponentially higher on these pastures than anywhere else. It's really great. You can take these infiltration tests, check out what's going on. It's really easy to see what goes on and how fast it goes. We've got a great example down the road where a guy had a gully through his barnyard or through his field. He was getting, after an inch rain, he'd get 6 to 10 inches of water coming through there. 3 years after he's been grazing, he doesn't get water coming through anymore. That's all water going down into the soil. That's going to keep that site from getting droughty in the summertime, and it's going to keep it producing. Now, we had some winter kill this winter, so the pastures don't look as good as you'd expect them to, but typically we're going full on by this time of year. I'd say our typical start date for grazing in Wisconsin is going to be the beginning of May. We're probably about a month behind, and with what Bill and Tom are doing here, it's pretty exciting because I'm thinking we're going to be pushing grazing deep into the fall, December, maybe even January. I'd love to graze some more corn again this year. And then with the cover crops that we've got going on, it's not uncommon. I'm working with beef producers, and I know what we can do with heifer producers. We can put them out maybe as early as March, weather dependent. Now, that's a big deal because think about what it is. The largest cost that every dairy operation incurs with their heifers is going to be their stored feed. So every day that those heifers are out on pasture, that's one less day that you had to actually mechanically harvest and put feed up and feed them. The other thing that is a huge deal, and I think we talked a little bit about this last winter, was just manure. If that manure's out there, if that urine's out there, that's something you don't have to haul. And as long as we're moving these animals around, strategic about it, we're not just dumping it in one spot, we're going to have a very good distribution about that. So You know, that's the plan. We graze them, we move them, we don't let them on these sites for more than 1 day at a time, so that way that grass has the ability to grow back, and that way we get as much production as you can. The biggest thing you can do, or the biggest mistake you can do, is just take these animals and dump them out there and pick them up in the fall. You will lose production. But done right, these sites get as much production or more production than some of the other fields out there. Or if you take a look like an alfalfa cutting, it's as productive as an alfalfa field. Some of these grasses are amazing. So I guess Bill and Tom, we got it set up to move it, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to do a little demonstration here. Or we want to
Go. Kid ran away.
Okay.
There he is.
We were going to do a little demonstration here just to show you how long it takes to move, feed, and water. You know, how many are out there right now? I mean,
I think this group only has like 20.
20. So the other thing to take a look at, and why pastures, when you start talking about water quality and improved infiltration, I love alfalfa, but the sod that forms underneath the pasture is thick. You don't get those bare spots. That really makes the water go down, and it keeps the soil in place, which is something that we're really trying to affect within this Fox River watershed. So it's a win-win on all fronts: money, labor, and environment. So have you had any thoughts now that you've gotten into it? I mean,
it works. I guess it brings you back 50 years, but you know, but maybe they're doing right back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's working for us.
Good.
The quality of heifers that come in are so much, I don't know, better, but are, you know, really good. They probably ain't gonna move real fast because they're in a lot on that part and they didn't eat it down real lot. Otherwise, they're waiting there for you to move it. So.
And it's earlier in the season too. Once it gets later, they know as soon as they see you walk out there, they'll come and stand waiting to move.
What was really fun last year was we grazed standing corn. There was a site, we did a different demo site, and it was a little thin, so we ended up grazing it. But how long were those heifers? They were out there for 2 weeks. I got to watch you guys bring heifers down. We walked them right down this lane. We grazed standing corn, and it was a fun experience. And that was all corn that you didn't have to harvest, and I'd say they harvested better than if you were out there with the equipment. So we're going to manage this, and we're going to take as much off of this as we can, and we're going to do a really good job grazing, so that way we keep our yields up. And the way to do that, like I said, is to move those animals once a day. If you're moving them once a day, those cows aren't back on the same site, they're not regrazing the grass, and that allows that grass 30-35 days to regrow. If you keep them in the same spot for longer than 3 days at a time, it's kind of like a bruise. You know, if you keep hitting it, you keep knocking on it, it's never going to heal up. It's just always going to be there. So that's the management part of this. The other thing too, you start moving them, you move the water tank, you move the animals, that spreads that manure around. And there's studies out there that show just how well that manure is actually spread. And basically it's about a 7-year rotation. If you're doing the management I'm talking about, you'll get just about 100% coverage every 7 years, as long as you're rotating it. The other thing to think about here too is, these look like fields here, but we've got gates open on the end. You can leave those gates 100 feet wide if you want. So this isn't a 15-acre field anymore, a 14-acre field. This could be a 30-acre field or a 90-acre field or whatever you want it to be. There are ways to set this up so that way any size equipment can go on there. So that way you don't ever limit yourself. The last thing you want to do is corner yourself into just one management system. Now, what we've done here is, this is kind of going to be the summer grazing. We've got these other paddocks up here that are kind of hard for just regular tillage or farming or anything like that. They're unique. So we put these into the rotational grazing system as well. But then in addition, we've got this. And if you look over the side there, that red clover, that's the field that was grazed earlier this spring. That was grazed late last fall, that was grazed this spring. Brent, was that a 1.5 tons of dry matter we took off of there?
That's what we figured for both spring and fall.
1.5 tons after the corn. So we took a harvest of corn off. We got the corn silage off there. Then we took another 1.5 tons of dry matter off of there for heifers. And I know we can do even better than that. It's just we're learning this. You know, we don't have this all figured out. But those animals are out there. They're healthy. They're grazing. These fields here, I mean, these are opportunities for Bill and Tom to stay out on the land, to keep that manure out of the pit so they don't have to start the tractor up and have this going. So this system is really, you know, trying to encompass everything throughout the whole winter and summer months. So, and if I can talk them into it, I'd like to get them to pre-place round bales in out winter and keep them outside even longer. You know, most winter days are pretty okay. So we haven't got that far yet.
Well, on the cornfields, it would probably work good. On the pasture, we're worried that we'd kill off the spots where they're eating all the time. But out there, it wouldn't matter because it's going to be corn again anyway.
Mm-hmm. So that might be the next experiment. All right. So we just moved them, or they were just moved. It literally takes 5 minutes, like I was saying, to move them to a new pasture, to give them water. And there's 20 in this group, but honestly, I've seen animals 200, 300. It takes the same amount of time to move those animals. You open up the gate and you close it behind her. That gate was put back up behind there because we don't want them going back out where they grazed. That's super important if you want to keep these pastures productive. That's going to prevent that bruise from continuing on.